Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern. Today, it's Tuesday and the patch notes have been posted, which means it's time for us to break down the top 5 changes of patch 13.15. I'll let you guys know what the biggest changes were in this week's patch, and what you can be looking forward to in your coming games. 13.15 isn't quite the world's patch, but a lot of regions are going to be playing their playoffs on this patch. As a result, it's a little bit more pro skewed than normal, with a lot of changes made specifically for champions at the pro level. That said, there are a lot of changes that are also going to trickle down and have an effect on your solo queue games, especially the Smite changes and changes to champion summoned pets. As a result, let's go ahead and start breaking down the changes, starting off with our number 5 change, the buffs to Camille. Now, Camille hasn't been a huge presence in pro play as of late, but she hasn't been that far out of pro contention in my opinion, and these buffs I think are maybe just enough to get her over the edge. The extra bonus on hit magic damage while her ultimate is ticking against the ultimate target specifically are quite a nice buff here. This is actually a good amount of damage that they're just giving Camille, and that's only at rank 1. At rank 2, or at rank 3, she's actually getting 25 extra damage on hit per attack against the ultimate target, which is quite a lot. This is of course at level 16, but she'll have plenty of time then to benefit from her increased attack damage growth as well. Ultimately, these should give Camille a little bit more punch in the later stages of the game to potentially make her a more well-rounded pick. I think these may be just enough to get her over the top, but we'll have to see where she ends up as time goes on. The number 4 change on this week's patch are the changes to Glacial Augment. Now, Glacial Augment has been seeing a lot of play on tank supports specifically, which always feels bad for tank supports because they don't really want to be taking Glacial Augment. They want to be using Aftershock or Guardian, but they feel obligated to take it because of how powerful the rune is in general. Riot have nerfed down the rune's base slow. It is now only a 20% slow, but they buffed up the scaling percentages on across the board. The AD scaling, AP scaling, and heal and shield power scaling have all been increased. Now, notably, this means that nothing that tanks are doing with Glacial Augment has increased. It's going to feel much worse on tanks and roughly the same on everyone else. As a result, it has not only taken a bit of a hit, but also tank supports can feel more empowered to go back to things like Guardian and Aftershock rather than being forced to take Glacial Augment as they currently are on live right now. Moving on to the number 3 change, and this is quite a big one, especially for normal players. These are the Smite and Ultimate Summons changes. Now, currently, right now, Smite is a huge method of dealing with Tibbers, Daisy, the Maid in the Mist, all sorts of big champion summoned pets, because you can hit them for 1200 true damage out of nowhere, instantly killing them. And as a result, Riot have had to buff the health totals on these mobs for quite some time. There's a reason why they have like 3000 health, and it's because you can smite them for so much damage that they have to have sufficient health left over afterwards to continue to function as an ultimate. Losing your ult out of nowhere feels really bad, especially when you're getting it killed by a 15-second cooldown summoner spell. Now, Riot don't like this particular loop, and as a result, they're making some changes. Now, Smite's damage against non-lane minions has been reduced dramatically. You're literally down like 500 damage at level 1, and it only gets worse from there. You lose out on so much damage against non-lane minions specifically. These are things like Malzahar Voidlings, Tibbers, Heimerdinger's Apex Turret, right? All those things are going to take significantly less damage from Smite to the point that they probably won't actually die outright. In exchange, however, they have nerfed down the durability on all of these champion summons. Tibbers, the Apex Turret, and York's Maid in the Mist have all received some changes to make them have less health, while generally adding back some more resist in order to make them so that they don't feel like wet sponges, but also so that they can have significantly less health and feel more fightable, so that these summons aren't just 1v5ing the enemy team on their own. Importantly to note here as well, I wanted to highlight Yorick's Maiden is really losing a ton of health. She's down to 1650 from 3300. It's literally cut in half, but she also now has armor and magic resistance where she didn't have before, and regenerates 2.5 health per second, which should, these two changes in general should help multiply the amount of health that the Maiden has left to make her feel generally as durable as she was before. But now that she's not getting smote out of nowhere, this will go a lot longer in terms of the Maiden. We'll talk about Ivern here in a bit. He has a bit more changes that they've put on the PvE for him. But generally speaking, this means that Smite is no longer really useful against these summons. It doesn't make any sense to be using it on them specifically to just remove them from the battlefield. Instead, you're more likely going to want to save your Smites for champions to help slow them down or to get a little bit more damage down on the actual important members of the enemy team. And you're not just going to be able to remove these summons outright, but in turn, they'll also feel a little bit squishier, so you'll be able to deal with them a little bit more easily in your own games. This is an important change, you guys, and if you only take one thing out of this entire video, this is it. Moving on to the number 2 changes on this week's patch, which are the changes to Kai'Sa. Now, Kai'Sa has just been a frankly overpowered champion in pro play. She's playable at mid lane, she's playable at AD carry, she does good poke damage, good burst damage, good sustain damage. She has a lot of random utility, especially with things like Static Shiv now at her disposal. There is a lot that Kai'Sa does and not a lot that she can't do, and as a result, she's basically been pick banned in professional play. Now, Riot are attempting to nerf down Kai'Sa, and they're trying to keep her having multiple viable builds and remains fun to play, quote unquote. These changes, I think, are decent hits to Kai'Sa. I like Acathian Rain doing a little bit less damage. I like Voidseeker having a little bit less of a cooldown reduction when she hits a target after it's been evolved. And the base health nerf here, I think, is actually fairly sizable. This really makes Kai'Sa a lot squishier in lane. But ultimately, these are a love tap where Kai'Sa needed a kneecapping. This is doing nothing at all to shift Kai'Sa's play rate at all. She is still going to be a professional play staple. I wouldn't be surprised if she's still pick banned. And honestly, if you can play Kai'Sa at a high level, you don't even care. You're in fact happy with these nerfs because it means that Riot isn't hitting her harder. I fundamentally believe that Kai'Sa needs a rework in her entire kit and playstyle. I do not think she's a sustainable champion as designed, but barring that, I think that she needs a significantly more comprehensive suite of nerfs if Riot want her to not be pick banned at Worlds this year, and I'm expecting to see that on 13-16. So for now, Kai'Sa mains, you guys can rest easy, but if she doesn't get nerfed in 13-16, you will have the most broken champion in the game for about a month to come. Finally, we want to talk about the Ivern changes as the final changes on patch 13-15. Ivern has a bunch of changes on this week's patch for 3 main reasons. First, Riot want his Enchanter builds to be objectively better than his high AP builds. They don't want the AP builds to be removed entirely, but because most people like Ivern as an Enchanter, Riot want to keep him as an Enchanter. 2, Ivern is generally overpowered right now, which means that Riot need to bring down his play rate. He's seeing a lot of play at the pro level specifically, and so Riot need to do something to reduce his overall power. And as foreshadowed earlier, Daisy needs changes to bring her in line with the other big pets like Tibbers. Don't be too scared about this change list though, because generally Ivern is making it out of these changes okay. A small amount of MR growth going away is fine, and Ivern only really lost AP ratios and has a less tanky Daisy in terms of his nerfs. She can't really be smoked to death though, so that's a decent change in general. So even though Daisy is less tanky, it's not as big of a deal as you might otherwise suspect. Daisy also lost some duration. 45 seconds, though, is still a long time to have your pet around. It just means that you'll have to be a little bit more careful with when you press the button as opposed to just saying yes every time Daisy is available. And generally, I think Ivern has lost power, but I think his Enchanter builds will be all but untouched on this patch, and I think he'll still be quite playable, but maybe, and hopefully, not the absolute menace that he's being currently in professional play. And that is going to be it for me today, guys. Those are the top 5 changes to patch 13-15. Let me know what you're most excited for down in the comment section below. I'm mostly here for the arena changes. Honestly, I didn't touch on those, but you guys love to let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.